Hello and welcome to episode 53 of Handgun Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Machad from the wild woods of central Maine, and this is your home for all the news, information, and discussion in the handgunning world. This week, Matt and I discuss the world of moon clips and auto-caliber revolvers, used both for self-defense, plinking, and competition. There's a whole world of revolvers out there, chambered for automatic pistol cartridges, so we're going to talk about a few of those here tonight. So as always, Handgun Radio is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network, and Brownells helps make handgun radio possible. Selection, service, and satisfaction. Find it all at Brownells. If you're doing any shopping with Brownells, please use our affiliate link, handgunradio.com/Brownells, to help support the show. So how you doing, Matt?
Oh, pretty good. How you doing?
Not bad. So we're going to head into the week in review here before we get into the main topic. So what did you do this week, Matt?
Shot an IDPA match Saturday, and got back to my wheel guns. Signed up for one of our big matches coming up here local, the Kentucky Colonel in IDPA, and then I actually went back to 18th century for a while. Did some flintlock Kentucky long rifle shooting for a couple days on vacation. Kind of get back to the old school. So it was pretty nice.
How was that? What caliber was that flintlock?
Mine's a 40 caliber, so it's a 395 ball.
Yeah.
And then I've got a 50 also. So
How do
I'm
you
mainly
have to-
focused on the 40.
Do you have to patch either one of them, or just straight right in?
Yeah, patch both of them.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it was a lot. I had never done it before, and I had inherited both of these guns, and finally it was time to get them out and give them a run. It was a hell of a lot of fun.
Definitely slows you down. I learned that when I started doing black powder shooting. It was weird. It was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to shoot these 5 rounds, and then 10 minutes later I'm going to get to shoot a little bit more. It's crazy how much time it takes.
Yeah, I got a lot faster towards the end of the day. My buddy, he's a part of the Corps. It's a big, club down here in Kentucky, and a Corps of Kentucky Long Riflemen. And, they run out of the bag. It's all traditional. So, I mean, you're sucking on your pillow ticking. Did you wrap the ball in? So you're loading, cutting that with the knife all out of the bag. It's all on your side. So it's a little quicker than you would think, but it's still slower than reloading the mag. But
Oh, definitely. So, excellent. Well, this week I did some reloading. Components seem to be showing up much more frequently around where I am, which is great, because for a while there, we'd get a bunch of primers in, but we wouldn't have any powder. Or we'd get a bunch of bullets in, but we wouldn't have any primers. So it seems to be showing up a little bit more consistently, which is awesome. And
how's the
also,
powder?
the powder, there's a lot of rifle powders around here, I found. It seems to be what they stock more of. I found a couple of cans of Trail Boss, which I picked up. But, like, my favorite stuff, HP 38 or Winchester 231, I haven't been able to find that for quite a few months around here.
Yeah, it's about the same here. The rifle powder's back, and you can sporadically find 1 pound in jugs here and there, but that's the only thing that's really lacking around here is the powder.
Right. I really like 231, Winchester 231 for my 9mm, because I can also use it in my 38 Special with the wad cutter rounds, and it sort of is like, I try to replicate that bullseye load, the one that people used to use. I think it's 2.7 grains of bullseye with a 148 grain wad cutter. They always used to use it for like the PPC matches and stuff, so that's what I try to duplicate when I want to do my target loads, and I've been using HP 38 because bullseye is really tough to find around here for some reason.
Yeah, it's non-existent around here either. The 231, that's the one I use the most of, and it's, like I said, I'll get lucky and find a pound here or there, but it's pretty much non-existent around here. And the Trail Bosses, I was wanting to try it after you've been recommending it, but it's I haven't seen it since, I don't know, probably before Christmas.
I highly, highly recommend that powder for anybody who wants to reload revolver rounds. It's great because it takes up most of the space in those formerly black powder rounds, like a 38 Special. When I load the 38 rounds with like a 125 grain truncated cone, like a plated bullet, there's a lot of space between the powder and the base of the bullet. I mean, you can just shake the round and hear the powder in there.
Yeah.
The Trail Boss, it isn't that way. It pretty much almost touches the base of the bullet. It's sort of like black powder almost, but it's not interchangeable. I'm just saying it's sort of like it. It's less dense, so it's very fluffy. So also I'd like to do some more interviews, and I'm looking to have some more of those lined up. I'd love to get in touch with the folks from North American Arms. I believe Sandy Chisholm is the president over there, and I'd like to talk with him about some of their guns, the small automatics, as well as their mini revolvers, of which I'm a proud owner of one. And I'd also like to talk to Bill Wilson regarding his work on the 1911, which he's well known for, and some long guns, and also his new venture that I just heard announced like a month or so ago into custom Beretta 92 components. So stay tuned for that. Have you heard anything about that, Wilson doing the 92 stuff?
I've heard people talking about it, and I guess it just recently popped up on the website, but I haven't really looked into it yet. Pretty interested to see that short reach trigger he's got.
I've heard some really good things about that short reach trigger. I think I talked about it last week. But it's interesting to see someone getting into the custom Beretta game, because that's really something that you've seen sort of neglected. There are plenty of people who modify Glocks and XDs. They'll do the grip modifications or something like that. But you very rarely hear of someone saying they mainly work on like custom Beretta stuff. And so I think maybe he's found a market that hasn't really been tapped yet, and especially if the Army's talking like they want to get rid of the Berettas, maybe you can expect a flood of used Berettas coming into the market pretty soon, a few years maybe.
Yeah, it might be perfect timing to get into it, because it's kind of died off. You really don't see too many people really, falling over it, in competition or anything. So.
Well, and one of the things you hear, like you said, with that short reach trigger is, the ability to actually have a proper grip on the gun, just because for some people it's so large. I know some people who try to shoot my Sig Sauer, my P226, they say it's just a big gun for them. It's way too big for their hand. So it'll be interesting to see what else they can do to the gun. I would really like to see them, Beretta, come back out with I think it was the Millennium or something like that. It was a single action Beretta 92 style. It had a contoured grip, and it had different grip panels on it that were slimline. And it had it looked like a straighter trigger, and it was just a beautiful looking gun. It was in stainless, and the grips looked like they were made out of carbon fiber that was like sealed with lacquer. It was just a beautiful 92, and if I had to own that style, that would be the one I would want. I wish they'd come back out with that.
Yeah, I'd be interested in checking them out. I'm in that boat where my fingers are short, so the SIGs and the Berettas just don't work for me. I can make it work, but it's just not comfortable or consistent enough.
Right. Well, and on that Millennium, the single action, they moved the thumb safety from the side of the slide into the traditional 1911 position. So that was another thing that really interested me, and I think that would fit a lot of hands really well.
Yeah, because with larger hands, it's hard to reach anything on the slide.
Right, and stuff like the Walther P38 or the 92 Berettas, for some people that can be difficult, that slide decocker combination. So that about wraps up the week in review. So we're going to head into the main topic, which is going to be auto caliber revolvers and moon clips. So we all know your typical revolver cartridges, the really long, typically based on a black powder design. So like the 38 Special started out as a black powder cartridge and then made the transition to smokeless in the early 1900s. So the 38 Special case is fairly long for its given purpose. If it was designed today with smokeless powders, they may not have made it such a long cartridge. You got that, the 357 Magnum, the 44 Special and Magnum, and the 45 Colt, and there are a bunch of others that I'm probably forgetting. But revolvers can also be chambered in auto pistol cartridges. So back in World War I, this kind of started back then. The United States entered the conflict, but they realized they didn't have enough 1911 45 automatic pistols to supply the troops. Now, you got to remember the 1911 was ordered, 6-7 years before we entered the conflict, so we may not have had the stores that we may have had of it in World War II. So an employee at Smith & Wesson devised a way to chamber their large 1917 revolver in 45 ACP. The problem being that a 45 automatic pistol round doesn't have a rim on it. They devised a system with a little tiny piece of sheet steel or spring steel that had 3 notches in it, and you could slide the rims of a 45 ACP case in there. That way, you would have the headspace be proper, and you would use 2 of these 3-round clips to function as the rims. So that facilitated proper head spacing and proper ejection of the rounds. Now, another advantage was the quick loading procedure facilitated by dropping in just two moon clips all as one unit into the revolver cylinder. You're not loading individual rounds. So Colt manufactured a similar gun as the Smith & Wesson. They also called it the 1917. I believe it was based on their new service model to supply the military with, and then the rest is history. Since that time, there have been a plethora of revolvers chambered in automatic pistol cartridges. Some have been more successful than others, and unfortunately, generally the theme tends to be less successful. I mean, there are a few that have been standouts, like the Smith 625 and the Target models of 1955 and 1950. But other than that, some of them have been in production for a couple of years and then fallen by the wayside. So we're going to try to discuss some of the advantages and disadvantages from a competition and a defensive use standpoint, and then some of the cartridges and the guns that were introduced that use the moon clip system that you may not have heard about. So, Matt, you're pretty familiar with the whole moon clip system, being that you do a lot of revolver competition. What do you think of it? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I mean, how do you feel?
I like it. I mean, it's fast. Everything's right there. You're grabbing 6 or 8 cartridges at one time, dropping into the gun. Then when you go to get rid of them, they all fall out. It's just extra weight. So gravity's your friend in that respect. So I mean, it's definitely a plus. The 625, the only reason I don't shoot it more, which is the 45 ACP, is just the recoil. By the time I get towards the end of a match, I'm starting to dip down, anticipating the recoil. So otherwise, I'd be shooting it all the time in IDPA. But
Well,
like
and it's weird too because I haven't fired a moon clipped gun yet, but I have fired a Ruger Blackhawk that shot 9mm. And being used to 9mm in an auto pistol, it felt weird to me. I kind of know how a 38 feels in a revolver, but a 9mm, it just had a weird recoil to me.
yeah, you don't have anything soaking it up, so you're getting all the recoil. You
Right.
usually have a slide going back. That's why I was surprised when I got my first. I had a 25-2, and I'd been shooting 1911 and the XD45 for several years before I got it. And I was like, holy hell, the first time I shot it, I was, just shocked that, 45 feels like nothing out of the semi-autos. And
Right.
it's not like it's a Magnum, coming out of your hand or anything, but it's just, it had the wood grips on it and the open back strap, so it was just constantly going into the palm of my hand. So I was quite surprised.
Now, sort of, so what are you running in your competition? You have a 625, and then don't you have one of your actual revolver chambered 38 357 that uses moon clips as well?
Yeah, I got the a 627 Pro Series, which is a 4-inch in frame that it holds 8 38 357. Then I've got the 627 B Comp Performance Center. It's got the comp on it, the front, and it's pretty much set up like an open gun. But they take the 8-shot moon clips.
And you just use those basically because they're easier than speed loaders.
Yeah, by far.
Right.
And like I said, you got 8 holes to hit it in, so they reload super fast.
Now, kind of moving in some of the advantages, we've already talked about the fast reload time, and that's true in competition as well as defensive use. Now, some of the defensive use stuff, we're going to have to make a distinction because what may be good in competition may not be very good in a defensive situation. So, another advantage, and this basically comes from like we were talking about earlier with the longer cartridges, the short subby cartridges like the 9mm and the 45 ACP are going to load quicker and go in easier in a revolver when they're all together, and they're easier to throw in because they're not just so long. You don't have to position them as precisely as you would with, say, a 38 or a 357. And a lot of the times, the competition guns more often will have the cylinders chamfered, so they'll actually be sort of a slope going into the cylinder. So you could basically just kind of line it up pretty generally and let the moon clip go, and it should slide in there on its own. Is that the case with your guns, Matt?
Yeah, if they're chamfered from the factory, a lot of times I'll actually put a little more chamfer on it, just like having a funnel on your semi-auto or have a beveled mag well, just aids in for the bullet to find its home.
Well, and I see like on that 929 that Jerry Mikulik helped design. When he did a video with high speed footage, and he was several like inches away from the cylinder when he let the moon clip assembly go, and it just basically fell onto the cylinder, bounced once, and found its home, and just slid right in there. And I was watching that in high speed. I was like, wow, that's nuts. I would think it would just fall off.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just they find their home. It's pretty amazing. And if you're moving around a little bit, like you're running or just shaking your hand, they actually go better. If you try to force them or try to do the work for them, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Right, and I mean, I don't think that would work very well with the longer cartridges. Is that harder with your? Do you find it harder to reload with your 627 with the moon clip as opposed to your 625?
Oh yeah, it's definitely harder with the rounds, but they still find their home. You got more points to find a home, but it's definitely a little more difficult.
Right. Now, the other thing is they keep all the rounds together and they go in and out of the gun all as one unit. So sometimes I've seen people, if they'll go to reload and they'll hold the gun horizontally rather than holding it upside down vertically, and they'll punch the ejector rod, and some of the rounds will stay stuck, in the gun. Well, where they all come out as one, you have less of a chance of that happening and possibly tying up the gun. But the other thing is, when you're loading the gun, you don't have any manipulation of knobs or buttons like you would have with a speed loader. So, like, when you're loading a 5-shot J-frame with a speed loader, if you have one of the HKS ones, you're getting the noses into the chambers and you're turning that knob. And that's an awkward motion, and it takes away time. And then also, before you close the cylinder, you got to knock that speed loader away. Some of the other ones will operate with you hitting a button with the heel of your hand, but still, that's one extra motion that you have to do, whereas with a moon clip, you push it in, as long as it's flush where it's supposed to be, you can close it and go right to town.
Yeah, because even the spring-loaded speed loaders, if you put your hand too long, they'll jam the rounds. You can actually pull it away too soon and grab the side of the round. So there's a lot more, fine motor skills involved than you would think.
Right. I mean, it's difficult, especially with the HKS ones. Those are not really known for their speed. They make a wider variety of them, so you can actually, get them for like your 22 revolver or something like that. But in terms of like ease of use, I wouldn't rate those very high.
No. Then you got
now,
the tough strips as well too.
Those are nice. Flat. Right. Those are nice when you want to hold something flat. When it would be, improper to carry a speed loader. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure that would print, but if it's like uncomfortable or something, you can use those. They are 6-shot, but I've seen Mass Ayub, and I agree with him. He leaves one of the holes in the tough strip empty, so he'll have a little bit more to grab onto when he's stripping them off into the cylinder.
But they're still slow as well, so.
Right. Now, what are some of the disadvantages, Matt, that you've seen with the moon clips?
They get bent pretty easy, and then you gotta have some. If you want to carry them on yourself, you've got to have something, like the California competition moon clip holder, where it actually kind of cradles it, because most of these moon clips are anywhere from 16 thousandths to 25 thousandths, so it's not super durable. The 45s are a lot heavier duty. I think they're probably like 26 thousandths thickness, so they don't bend as easy, but they if they're bent just a little bit, they can tie the gun up quick.
And sometimes you won't see that they're bent. It's almost imperceptible, but it will tie the gun up. It'll bind up the cylinder almost if it got too dirty, something like that.
Yeah, if it throws it back even not enough to tie up the gun, it's going to be bent back. So when the hammer hits the primer, it's going to push it forward. Right. So you may lose momentum and not go off either.
No, the other thing is, and I've noticed this, I've looked at these, I've handled them, I haven't shot them, but you have a 1917 Smith that you just picked up, right?
Yeah.
Now, the guns will sometimes not function well without a moon clip, and this isn't always the case, but headspace issues can arise. And, for instance, in the 1917 Smith & Wessons, the chambers were always stepped, meaning that you could put, in a pinch, you could put these rimless rounds into the revolver chamber, and they would actually headspace on the case mouth of the auto pistol rounds. with the early Colts, before they actually started stepping the chambers, if you dropped that round in, it would pretty much drop all the way through the cylinder. It wasn't stepped, so you had to use the moon clips on the early 1917 Colts, and they rectified that later on. So in some guns, you may have more of a problem with this than others. You may have light primer strikes, and especially if the gun's been like tuned, if it's been tuned to have a really light trigger pull and stuff like that, you've lost some of the momentum of that hammer. You may experience this a little bit more. I know you said, Matt, your 625 doesn't really care for being shot without moon clips, right?
Yeah, no, it's the Performance Center one does a little better than my 625 JM. The 625 JM, you're lucky to get 50% without, and then they're not coming out. So you'll get 3 or 4 come out, then the rest of them you're trying to grab with a fingernail or pocket knife to pull the brass out.
Right.
And but that 1917, they were 100%. I ran probably 100 rounds with no moon clips, and they came out just as easy can be.
Yeah,
So,
the earlier ones, I know, especially because they were made for wartime use, they wanted to be able to be used without the moon clips, just in case they, had to use a stick or something to poke them out of the chambers.
yeah, like I said, I tried both, and the day I went out, I took the Performance Center and that one, and without the moon clips on the Performance Center one, I had probably, I don't know, maybe 90% go with no moon clips, but they were sticky as well, that you couldn't get them all out. So it definitely liked the moon clip a lot better. The 1917 didn't care.
Right. So kind of moving into some of the calibers and guns, there's been quite a few that have been produced, and some, like we said, have been a little bit more popular than others. So starting out, like you said before, Smith & Wesson, their model numbers, if it has a 6 in front of it, it's a stainless steel gun. So, Matt, you said you had a S&W 25-2, which is the blued version in 45 ACP, right?
Yeah, it was a square butt blued version.
Now, that was made for quite some time, but then the 625 came out, and that was produced from 1988 to today. It's still produced, and it's a stainless steel revolver chambered in 45 ACP, and it can use the 45 auto rim. Now, you do a lot of revolver competition, Matt. Would you say this is probably the most popular one you see used?
It depends on the sport. It was for years, the only game in town, but they've gone to limited, so now you see the 8 shots a little bit more. In IDPA, it's probably the most frequently one seen, unless you run the 686, which is the 38. So they have two divisions, but
Yeah.
it was the only game in town for a long time.
Now, have you seen anybody using the older model, the blued one?
Yeah, you'll see quite a few of those. Mostly it's the 625 though. I think a lot of people, the older blued guns are going to the safe now,
Right.
and people are just beating up on the stainless guns.
Well, and the older blued one didn't have that full-length underlug, so you're not getting all that front-end weight. I mean, do you prefer, if you had to choose, which would you prefer? Say the 25 without that full underlug was not blued, it was stainless. What would you prefer, that full-length underlug or the half one?
Yeah, I like a little extra weight in the front. I'm not real onto the super light guns.
No.
I tend to overpower them a little bit.
That's my experience. I seem to like the shorter, like the 4-inch barrels. I really like my 19 with the 4-inch barrel. I don't really like the guns. I shot a 686, and it was a nice gun, but I just didn't like all that weight out on the front end.
Yeah, I shoot a 4-inch better. A 6-inch gun I don't shoot real well. But if I get a 4-inch with an underlug, I'm happy. It's kind of the perfect medium for me.
Right. So moving on to one that I really like and I would love to own someday, it's the Smith & Wesson Model 610. Now, this was an end frame, much like the 625, but it was chambered in 10 millimeter. So it was produced in the heyday of the 10 millimeter auto round. It was pretty much the early 90s. And the Smith & Wesson Model 610 was only produced from 1990 to 1992. It was found with an unfluted cylinder, and it had the added advantage of being able to fire 40 Smith & Wesson, much like the 38 Special shoots in a 357 Magnum. The 610, I think Smith was trying to... I mean, this was back in the day when there were still some police departments that carried revolvers. So, maybe they were trying to capture some of that market. Hey, if you're going to carry a 10 millimeter auto like the FBI is doing with this new gun, why don't you carry a 10 millimeter revolver or something like that? I guess it was reintroduced back in 1998 for competition shooting, but I mean, at that point, you had the 625, which a lot more people shot 45 ACP than they did 10 millimeter in competitions. Have you ever seen any of these being shot, Matt?
I've seen one pop up at one competition, but other than that, I've never actually seen one in comp. It just 10 millimeter rounds is hard to find, and like in IDPA, you don't need to recoil the 40, so it's just
Well,
not a real popular.
well, and what I saw a lot of people doing too with the 610s, would they would load up their own 10 millimeter, but they would load it like 10 millimeter light, or
Yeah,
I've heard Mass Ayub call it 10 millimeter minus P, and it's basically just like a 40 caliber performance in a 10 millimeter case.
yeah. I don't really have a use for it, but I want one real bad. My buddy had the 4 and the 6, and I don't. The 10 millimeter has always kind of enamored me for some reason.
I like that too. I'm like sort of like those niche calibers, but I mean that would be a great hunting round. You load it low for deer and stuff, and if you wanted to bear hunt or something, you could load it with basically the hottest rounds you could find for the 10 millimeter and still be within the margin of safety in that big revolver.
Yeah. So, but then other people say, well, let's get a 41 mag. So I don't know,
Right.
but I still like to have it.
Now, kind of moving down in the frame and the power spectrum, Smith & Wesson made this gun called the 646, and this one's a little bit more rare than the 610, I think. This one's an L frame, so it's on the same frame as the 686, but it's in 40 Smith & Wesson. So it was originally produced as a performance center model, and then it was made into a limited production run model in 2000. There are only about 300 of the performance center model made, and production ceased in 2003. I've never seen one of these in the wild. I've only seen pictures of them, but I think this would be an awesome gun. I have heard of problems with ejection and stuff, though, like headspace issues. These were one of the guns I heard didn't shoot well without the moon clips.
Yeah, I hadn't really heard about it until I seen you post on it. I don't know what, a week ago or something on the web page, and I got it looking into it. I imagine that case expands so much when it goes off because of the pressure. I guess that's why it's so sticky to get them out, the extraction problems.
Well,
So you
right.
almost have to have the moon clip on it.
And you think about something like 45 ACP. I mean, that's a low pressure cartridge. So I mean, they haven't encountered those problems with that. So I don't. Maybe they encountered the same issues with the 10 millimeter. I'm not sure though.
I haven't really heard anybody complaining about that though, so I don't know. But it's not like you run into somebody that owns one every day, so
That's true.
I
And
don't see it talked about a lot.
maybe that shorter casing is projecting the pressure in a smaller surface area, which makes it a little bit tougher. I mean, that would be the only thing I would think of.
Yeah.
So one of the ones I threw on here technically doesn't use moon clips, but it is chambered in 9 millimeter. So this was the Smith & Wesson 547. So it's a K frame which uses 9 millimeter parabellum but does not use moon clips. It's a fairly rare K frame revolver. I don't remember the production years, but it didn't use the traditional moon clips, but it used these small extractor claws that engaged the ejector groove on the rimless 9 millimeter case. These are produced, I believe, for like an overseas contract or something, and it's kind of similar to what Charter Arms is doing now with their, I think it's the Pit Bull. I think they did it in 9 millimeter and 40,
Yeah.
and it uses a little ejector arm to grab that rim, the groove there, and pull the case out. I guess some problems arose with stuck cases since the claw wouldn't always reliably grab the round, but it was interesting to see them come up with a way to use these auto rounds without having to use the moon clips.
Yeah, it was a great idea, just kind of early for its time too.
Well, and I don't even know. I haven't heard many great things about the Charter ones yet either. I haven't really seen any reviews on them, but I would think that with 40 and 9 millimeter, those are fairly high pressure cartridges compared to 38 special stuff like that. So I would assume having problems with stuck cases, aside from the claw not always reliably grabbing the rim, but I mean that case is probably there's a high pressure. The case is probably stuck to the inside of the chamber walls pretty solidly, and that little arm having to pull it out may not be as strong as it needs to be.
Yeah, you don't have a whole lot of room to grab, and you don't have a lot of material there grabbing it, so I
Well,
don't
right,
know. It's
and
just
and brass is a soft metal, so I mean, I can see that thing just breaking the rim right off if if it went too far.
I like the idea. I just don't know how practical it is.
Well, and then basically you've gone to the point. It's like, well, why am I using a gun that uses 9 millimeter? Why wouldn't I just use something in 38 or something if I'm not going to use the moon clips? Because you've lost the advantage of the moon clip.
Yeah.
So
So,
this next one, you added this one, Matt. Have you ever seen one of these in the wild? The 940 Smith and Wesson?
oh yeah, they were pretty popular around here. Used to see them a lot, and several of my friends have them. And I would like to get one myself, but man, they've really jumped up in price the past couple of years.
Have you ever shot one?
Yep, it was
What
nice.
did it feel? Was a significant difference between a J frame and like 38 and a J frame and 9 mil?
Not really. It was pretty similar from what I remember. It's been a couple of years since I had the last shot one, but it was just it. I perceived it being lighter, and the recoil was a little bit different, but it was about the same. But I like that short stubby round in it,
No, was the cylinder much shorter?
quite a bit shorter.
Quite a bit
If I
shorter?
remember, yeah.
Because that would be one of the things I would think would be a great advantage. You make that cylinder quite a bit shorter because it doesn't have to house that long 38 caliber cartridge, and you've got a lighter gun that with a smaller footprint.
Yeah. So, like I
So
said, eventually I'll grab another one.
now the 940 was produced from 1993 into 1996, and it was just your standard J frame, produced a 9 millimeter parabellum. I had read in one of Mossad Ayoub's books that the Michigan State Police issued them as backup guns so the officers could use the 9 millimeter rounds from their standard duty SIG P226s. But the hires up found the officers were using the moon clips as emergency screwdrivers, which would bend the clips, which could lock the gun up, and they wouldn't realize they were bent until they put the clip in the gun, closed the gun, and then pulled the trigger, and it would bind up. So they eventually, when they went to a SIG in 40 caliber, they ended up just ditching the 940 and going to a smaller 38 backup gun. And the 940 just quietly faded from production in 1996. So hopefully Smith will decide to come out with another auto caliber chambered J frame soon, because that would be awesome. I bet that would sell.
Yeah, I bet it comes back just with the 929 and the 986 coming out this year.
Well, and if you think about it, with this whole thing in pocket guns, I mean, Taurus has that ridiculous view, which I don't even know how that stabilizes the bullet, that short barrel, but
Yeah.
this trend towards smaller pocket guns, there are still fans of revolvers and J frames, but imagine having a cylinder that is just long enough to chamber, your heaviest 9 millimeter bullet up to a 147 grain, and you could make that cylinder so much shorter than it would be on your standard J frame, like a 442 or something, and
Yeah.
that would save a lot of weight for a pocket gun. And if it was produced in titanium, even better.
Yeah, because you could actually get a little longer barrel by shortening up that the cylinder and still have the same footprint, but get more velocity out of it.
Right, I think that would be a great combination.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Like I said, if they bring it out, I will buy one. And everybody's talking about it that they would. It I hang out at the gun store from time to time, and it's come up several times up there. So I wouldn't be surprised at SHOT Show or NRA Show they bring it back.
Wonder if they'll come out with a K-frame with interchangeable cylinders between 9 millimeter and 357. That would be pretty cool as well as a companion piece.
Yeah, I just don't know if they would do it being just a little difference in size.
Right.
There's some accuracy problems in like the Blackhawks and everything with the interchangeable cylinders, but
So one that I haven't seen personally, and I don't know if you have either, the Ruger SP-101 and the Security 6, which was the fixed sight version of their service. Was it? Which one was the fixed sight version? The Security 6 or the Service 6? I think the
I
Service
can't
6
remember.
was the adjustable sight version, and the Security 6 was the fixed sight version.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I'm not 100% sure.
It's a little bit larger than the SP-101s, if I'm not mistaken. The SP-101s, I think, is a 5-shot sort of J-frame from the Ruger lineup, and then the Security 6 was their older service guns before I think the GP100 came out. They're
Yeah.
Ruger's fantastic small and medium frames. They were chambered in 9 millimeter as well as for quite some time. And then Ruger made their own proprietary moon clips for their guns. They were much thinner, and I don't know, I haven't heard any reliability problems, but they don't look as robust as some of the other moon clips.
Yeah, I haven't. I didn't know they made it in Security 6. I knew they made it in the SP 101, but
Now, sort of talking about moon clips here, Matt. Which brands have you seen are durable, and which ones, would you recommend people kind of use caution with?
well, it really depends on the. If you go with the 45, I've used several different clips, and they've all been of good quality because they're a thicker clip. You don't have to worry about it as much. Revolver Supply Company, Moon Clip Tool, TK Custom, and Hearthco all make great moon clips, and I've seen some of the generic ones people buy off eBay work pretty well. If you go to the 8-shot 357s, that's a whole just bucket of worms you've opened up there because there's different thicknesses, and it depends on what brass you're using. I use mooncliptool.com is where I get all my moon clips for my 627s, and they're at 22 thousandths, and they work with my Federal brass, but they will not work with Winchester brass, and Remington brass is real loose, and they won't really line up real well. So that's something else to consider. And then if you go with have your cylinder cut like on a 686, the regular 6-shot, they're a real thin moon clip, and you run into the same problems as far as what brass you use. So that's something else to consider if you get one that's not, from the factory.
Right. Now, what about these ones I've been hearing about the plastic ones, the rims, I think?
Yeah, rims. I hear a lot of great things, but I've not used them myself. I'll probably get some just to try, maybe as range clips. But I don't know. My buddy, he's run probably 10 or 12 matches with them. He says they're great, but
Now,
you can use your finger to pop them in and out. You can unload them, but I don't know, anything that usually is newfangled and easy usually doesn't work out real well. But
in terms of like price wise, what is someone looking at if they get into the game? They have a gun, and also another distinction I want to make is if you have a Model 27 revolver, don't think that you can use the moon clips. The cylinder has to be cut for you to use them, or else the cylinder probably won't close if you try to use a moon clip on a gun that's not cut for them.
yeah, no, they has to be cut for it. Like the 627s, as far as I know, they're pretty much across the board cut for it. And all your 625s and 25s will be cut for the moon clips. The 686, all your rim cartridges, generally they're not cut for it, and you have to have that done. It's about $125 to $150 to have somebody cut them for you. Then you got to buy the moon clips themselves for the conversion. And
Right.
then,
It can make it a lot easier though in the long run.
yeah, it definitely makes it a lot easier. You just, then you got to look at your carry methods for it. And your moon clips are vary anywhere from $1 to $4 a piece, depending on what material it is and who you're getting them from.
Now, what about the carriers when you're running around, doing your competition shooting? I've seen people use like the shoot the moon carriers that are just like the little like sheet steel clip. You just slide it right onto your belt.
Yeah, they work real well. It's just one here. I'm assuming you can see it on the camera. They just clip on the belt. They've got a little a centerpiece to support all the rims, or support all the cartridges rather. And then you've got some like North Mountain, which hold two of them stacked on top of each other, and they clip on the belt as well. It's primarily for competition because it's a little bit bulky, but I have used it for daily carry, and it supports them, keeps them from getting bent, and you could have two reloads, so that's pretty good.
Well, that's one of the things people need to be aware of too. You're not going to want to throw these moon clips into your pocket like you might with a speed loader because the risk of them getting bent when you're just moving around and stuff is just really high because some of them are just thinner than others.
Yeah, if you put them in a shirt pocket that was draped, or a jacket pocket, they might survive, but I wouldn't do it. Something that you may rely on to save your life. Because one little finger could be bent just a little bit and lock that gun up. Then you're having to try to beat the cylinder out because sometimes they get stuck pretty tight. So I
Right.
definitely recommend something that, supports the case all the way around and has a center post to center the moon clip. And, these ones from California Competition Works, I think they're like 15 bucks a piece. So it's, about the same as a mag carrier if you get, one of the polymer ones. So it's just a different method, but it's just as, as easy to overcome just, as carrying an extra mag.
Right. So, kind of moving into the last little section here in the main topic is the oddball chamberings. So, we've got two here, and the first one is one that a lot of people haven't heard of. I know, Matt, you said you hadn't heard of it. And then the
No,
second
to
one is
be.
one that a lot of people have heard of. So, the first one is 9mm Federal. So, you've heard of the weird 9mm non-tapered case. I think they call it 9mm automatic, but this is 9mm Federal. So it's a rimmed 9mm case, and it's basically just a duplicate of the famous Federal 9BP round, which is just a standard pressure 9mm, 115 grain jacketed hollow point at around 1,100 feet per second, which was really popular, in the Wonder 9 years and the early 90s and stuff. So it's basically just a 9mm round that has a rim on it, so you can chamber in a revolver without using a moon clip. And it ended up not being very popular, and Federal dropped it just a few years after its introduction. And then the next one is the 45 Auto Rim. So this one was produced way early on, I believe in the late 20s, early 30s, by the Peters Cartridge Company. And it was basically an attempt to negate the use of moon clips. So it's a 45 automatic cartridge just with a rim. And it's still produced in limited numbers today. Do you see anybody using 45 auto rim, or they basically just stick with the moon clips?
Moon clips. Yeah, people talk about it, but I've never seen anybody really use it practically.
I know you can order the brass for 45 auto rim from Starline, but you actually have to get a different shell holder if you're going to be doing that.
Yeah, and I know HKS does make a speed loader for it.
It's just,
So
I mean, I understand not wanting to have to use the moon clips, but at that point, the only advantage is the short, stubby round.
yeah,
I mean, at that point, you're not using the moon clip, so they're all coming out individually, just like a revolver cartridge would. And, so basically the only advantage is the fact that the case is really short because it's an auto pistol round.
and if you carry it in an HKS speed loader, you're still got a round cylinder that you're carrying around. So I just
Right.
don't see any upside to it.
So they got those oddball, and there's a bunch more. I've seen guns chambered in 38 Super, and I'm sure that's basically just to maintain ammo compatibility with their competition auto or something like that.
Yeah, plus they're shorter, so it's
38 Supers are?
yeah than the 38 special. So that's one reason people were switching over to that. And then now a lot of people are running the 38 short Colt instead of going to the 929.
Right.
They'll load it up to 9mm specs and just still using their 38 equipment. So
Right.
that's something to be looking into. And actually, the Dylan Blue Press magazine actually did a story on it this month.
I'll
People
have
want
to
to look
check
into
that
it a little
out.
bit more. It's pretty
Excellent.
interesting.
Perfect. Well, that about wraps up the main topic on auto pistol caliber revolvers and moon clips. We're going to head into the wrap-up section and the new segment. So before we head into the wrap-up section, we have a new segment here we're going to try out this week and probably next week, and hopefully we'll make it sort of a regular feature. So it's going to be the obscure gun or gadget that we want, and this week I picked a gun. So we're going to basically pick and link to a new or an obscure gun that we want. It's purely like a money, if money were no object exercise, and maybe you, the listeners, will hear about a gun you didn't know existed or want to buy one too. So what did you go with, Matt?
I went with the 1911, but one made by Singer for World War II use. But there's one my dad actually carried in Korea. He thought that was the funniest thing that his gun was made by a sewing machine company, and it's one of the rarer models now. It's probably been rebuilt 15 times over by the time he got it in Korea. But it'd be priceless to me to have it. But it's worth it. I tried to look it up on Gumroad to see what the last one sold for, but I know that's the prices of all the 1911s that were issued.
Right, I want to say it was up in the thousands. I know it's crazy how much like the ones that were made by smaller companies, maybe only made in like the hundreds of guns. I think Singer only made like 1,000 guns or a little bit over that.
Yeah, I was thinking it was a little bit less than 1,000, but I know for some reason 30,000 sticking in my head one sold for because it was such a low production run.
Right. Well, like I said, in World War II, the government contracted out to many different companies like Singer, who weren't didn't Rockola made the M1 carbine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
then
they're
it
just
was
a bunch of companies who weren't gun companies making pistols and carbines and rifles, to supplant World War II needs.
next. My dad was the first division Marine at Chosin Reservoir, and
Yeah.
he had the his Garand and he had this, and he didn't get to bring either one of them back. But my mom's not a gun person, but that was one of the things she always thought was funny. He always talked about his sewing machine.
Right, and then that's the thing. I mean, a lot of the guns used in Korea were, basically everything from World War II just got carried over to Korea.
Yeah, they just went through the armory and went right back to service.
Right. So mine is sort of on the fantasy side of things, but it wouldn't be unheard of to see Smith& Wesson make a limited run, maybe for like Tallow as a distributor or something. So I want a 44 special snub-nosed revolver with an unfluted cylinder on the L frame. So they could make it a 5-shot like they did with that new Model 69, but have an unfluted cylinder and a 2.5-inch barrel on the L frame, and I would love that. And for some reason, I don't know, I like 44 Special. I'm weird. I like my guns chambered for what they're going to shoot.
Yeah, that'd be awful nice. I
It
have
would
to
be
admit.
nice. It'd be a little bit easier to carry than an end frame, too.
Yeah, with all the hubbub on that 69, it seems like they would explore that platform a little bit more. It would be a 44 mag, but you may not get your total wish.
Right, but even with that 5-shot cylinder, I mean, the L frame would just be eminently more concealable than an end frame. I mean, good luck trying to carry that during the summertime.
Yeah, but all you
So
gotta do is talk to Julie, see if
I
she hook
know.
you up.
Give her a call. Get someone going over there. So we'll head into the wrap-up section. So don't forget to shop Brownells using our affiliate link, handgunradio.com/Brownells. And also be sure to go like Handgun Radio on Facebook and share it with your friends. There's a lot of great posts over there, pictures, videos, and different updates on the show. And also leave us a review on iTunes. It helps the show in the iTunes standings and helps it get noticed. And be sure to listen to all the great shows on the Firearms Radio Network, including Gun Guy Radio, This Week in Guns, Fat to Fit HQ, the AR-15 podcast, and many more. There are great content and great new shows being added all the time, so be sure to go check that out. And also be sure to visit the Firearms Insider for reviews and SHOT Show 2014 coverage. And also, if you're interested in writing reviews for the Firearms Insider, please email tj@firearmsradio.tv. And also, be sure to check out the Firearms Radio Network on YouTube. There's a lot of great videos, including the video from tonight's episode, so you could be able to watch that there. So, Matt, where can people find you? What are some of your favorite websites?
Let's go over there at www.revo-nation.com. I'm usually hanging out over there, or I'm a moderator over at Gunbook on Facebook. It's Daniel Shaw's. It's kind of a show and tell page for everybody's gun and gear. So go give it a check. It's facebook.com/gunbook. Go out there and join the club.
So that about wraps up this week's episode of Handgun Radio. So until next week, have fun and safe shooting.